evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Live. On our program this evening, the textbooks saga that's refusing to go away. The first of the 3 investigations into the delivery of textbooks in Limpopo has been completed. The outcome of Professor Mary Metcalf's 2-week investigation was made public last Monday. The report, of course, confirmed what we all knew, that textbooks were not delivered to all schools in Limpopo. Professor Metcalf criticized the Limpopo Education Department for their reckless overspending that she said precipitated the crisis. She didn't spare the National Education Department either for its inexplicable delays in ordering the books. She has also recommended that the government make known in the public interest just how much was paid to EduSolutions for aborted services and whether the state will seek to recover those monies. Now, what I've just read you, of course, are only some of the conclusions and recommendations Professor Metcalf makes in her 80-page report. She's here in the studio in her first public appearance since handing over her report. Mark Haywood is from SECTION27, the NGO that took the government to court to force the state to deliver books to Limpopo school children. EduSolutions, the company that was initially contracted to deliver textbooks, is being represented here tonight by their executive director, Mr. Themba Ndlovu. Panyaza Lisufi is the advisor to the National Minister of Education. And joining us from Limpopo studios is the province's MEC for Education, Mr. Dixon Masamula. Welcome to all of you. Quite a big church we have here tonight. Of course, remember, you at home can participate in the program by emailing your comments to sundaylive@sabc.co.za or by posting on our Facebook page, Sunday Live. Our SMS line is 34065. That number again, 34065, and calls are charged at R1.50. Let me start with you, Professor Metcalf. I mean, you saw some of the key points we took out of that report. But what for you stood out? If you were to tell South Africa today something out of your experience, out of the 2 weeks, in the 2 weeks you were in Limpopo, what would you tell South Africans today?
I think 2 things were, first of all, I learned a great deal from the team that I worked with. I worked with a team that included auditors, and we used the methodology of audit to trace the process. The second thing that's clear to me is that there's a great deal of confusion about what the situation is and what the situation isn't. Part of that is because principals have not been certain what books they were going to receive. So even where schools may have received the books that they are scheduled to have received, they may not yet understand it because the orders were changed. So there's a huge communication task that lies ahead of government, communicating what was ordered, why, and that it may be different principals were expecting.
Of course, that speaks to those books that were in fact delivered. But
yes.
Your survey suggests that not all books were delivered to all schools.
That also needs clarification, because textbooks are delivered on an annual basis on the basis of a top-up. So for some grades, no books would have been delivered at all.
Yes, we're talking about 1, 2, 3, and 10.
1, 2, 3, and 10,
yes.
And top-ups for 11 and 12. Unless that's understood, we may find that there's principals who are saying, I'm waiting for my books, whereas in fact, no books are intended for them this year.
Okay. Mr. Lisufi, from where you sit, you made an apology on Monday and say, to the extent that you have failed the children of Limpopo, you apologize.
Thank you so much for you. And I'm quite glad that Prof has clarified that most important aspect. That the issue that we are dealing with here is the issue of those grades that need to be given. And where we stand as a Department of Basic Education, we have said it and want to say it just now, that indeed the pain that the children of Limpopo has gone through is a pain that must not be repeated. And as the part of the Department of Basic Education, the portion that we are responsible with, we accept fully the blame that is associated with it. But we want to emphasize that there are other people as well that must come on board and accept their portion of their blame. But where we are, we've gone beyond the blame game. We've accepted the report, or 2 other investigations to come on board. On the basis of those particular investigations, we are already in the field to mop up all outstanding issues that are in the report, but at the same time to ensure that we don't have a repeat and that stock for 2013 is in our warehouse before the end of this year.
Okay, now let's go to Limpopo now for one of those people that a lot of you seem to be saying that should take the blame for where we're finding ourselves in. MEC, do you accept your part of the responsibility?
I think what I need to inform South Africans' view is that it is extremely important for all of us to note the fact that by September last year, when the department could not proceed with the ordering of the textbooks, was not precisely because we are irresponsible and we don't care. It was as a consequence of an old problem which predates many years ago, and I think out of the assessment that we've done ourselves, just starting from 2004-05 financial year to date, it has come out very clear that this, and since then, it has never been able to manage to actually administer the compensation of employees successfully. Year in and out, ever since then, it ran into overdrafts with regard to that process, up until when National Treasury gave an instruction that there should be a budget provided fully for the compensation of employees, which therefore then suggested that this department had to find ways internally to actually get money elsewhere, shifted into compensation of employees, which is what actually created problems. And just to draw a clear comparison here for South Africans to note, that the fact that in the past years this department has never had problems and it was able to run its key programs without problems is because it was permitted at that time to overspend on compensation of employees, as I say, from 2004, amounting to millions and millions of rands. The fact that that point had to be stopped at some point, which is last year, that's where the actual problem started. And unfortunately, the money which we had thought that it would be repaid back and through treasury processes by September last year, that money never came. And that is why we had all these difficulties that led to the process, unfortunately, coinciding with Section 100, that we were unable to continue with the actual ordering of textbooks. So for me, that is a fundamental point which has to be clearly understood and probably well communicated.
Well, I mean, although Auditor General and Public Protector reports would probably suggest otherwise, but say we accept that explanation. Are you here tonight to South Africans that you have no part whatsoever in the crisis that the children of Limpopo, grades 1, 2, 3, and 10 are finding themselves in?
The point I'm raising here, Vuyo, is that having explained that background very briefly, I think everybody is quite aware that when Section 100 came into the province and it was proclaimed, and also having had a meeting with the leadership that came on the 12th of December, it was made very public and very clear that every department should not proceed with any financial transaction. And therefore, understandably, one other point that has got to be clearly understood within context is what does it mean to be under Section 100? It's a debate that has started early January to date, but we shouldn't belabor that point. But for the purposes of me responding to that question, is that to be under Section 100, it means both political executive powers and as well as administrative powers. They are not in the province. If I were to put it very clear and light, is that the situation depends on the maturity of individuals concerned, because there hasn't been any regulatory framework ever since then to date that says these are the responsibilities bestowed upon MEC Masimula and some colleagues here and there, to the extent that one could be able to take full responsibility on some of these matters. Okay, this department is under Section 100, and understandably, that part has got to be fully understood, because I am a placeholder, if I were to put it that way, because the powers are not here. Okay. Now, but that is blame game, as I said, cannot continue to be on our table. We've got to be very able to move forward with regard to this matter. But
okay, we'll get into the detail of that, and for so that it is clear. Mark.
Yeah, look, I think we have to be able to move forward, but to move forward, you have to at least start with an acceptance of the failure, an acceptance of letting down over 1 million learners. You have to start in the way that Panyaza has done, with an apology. You know, I feel disappointed because MEC Masemola has a constitutional responsibility to deliver basic education to the children of Limpopo. It's not just a choice. He's under a legal to make sure that kids have textbooks, that they have toilets, that they have teachers, that they have desks, etc., etc. And I'd like the MEC to say, we've made a big mess here. I apologize. There may be this reason for it or that reason for it, but there has to be an acceptance of responsibility. It's been reported in the newspapers today that I think 70% of grade 10 students who set mid-year exams in a sample of schools have failed their mid-year exams. Failing children's lives, not just for now, you're failing children's lives for the whole of their life. And that's a terrible thing to do to children.
Okay. Mr. Ndlovu, your opening remarks, and I also would like you to perhaps address one of the issues we raised at the beginning, which from Professor Metcalf's report says, in the public interest, maybe it should be known whether in fact EduSolutions was given money to walk away or whatever you call it from this situation.
Thanks, Vuyo. I think starting with that, Professor Metcalf has correctly said the matter has to be investigated, and we should allow those processes to take place because she herself couldn't pronounce on the matter, and there's a lot of investigation to be conducted to that. And
well, in all fairness, to her, there was no forensic investigation.
Absolutely.
I think she makes that point in her report.
Absolutely. So we should allow those processes to go on. But what stands out for me here is how this report begins to provide a fresh perspective to what has been going on. For the first time over the last 6 weeks, we've had something completely different. And there are 3 critical points that stand out for me. The first one is the one that points at a fact that says, look, this is too complex an issue. You can't really blame, apportion, and identify a single culprit. Added to that, it then moves on to say, look, firstly, we should accept the phase of reckless expenditure. The way it's put, it suggests that something could have been done differently in the expenditure in the province. And surely it wouldn't just be only for LTSM. There are many other expenditure that needs to be analysed, get an understanding of how it went on and how it then, in the end, impacted on LTSM. But secondly, she says, and I think this is profound because it's not coming through all the time, the fact that the officials and administrators are accountable for their responsibilities. And in this particular instance, they must be made to account and stand up and say what it is that they did. In particular, the National Department comes in as an intervention team for 5 months. The orders are not placed. Priorities are put elsewhere, not at the delivery of textbooks into the classrooms. And I think the important point that is raised is an indictment against the systems and the processes that have been set in place by the service providers. Surely there is a need for us to look into this and find ways of resolving this going forward. My comment would be to say, look, if you know anything about LTSM delivery, you should understand that by now, the whole horses have bolted. It's water under the bridge. There is no way you're going to resolve the issue in Limpopo. Currently, for 2012, you are at a time when you should be looking at 2013 finish and clear.
I hope you're not going to say it's going to be past 1. Well, it's time to take a short ad break. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back, and thanks for staying with Sunday Live. Remember, part in tonight's discussion by posting your comments, questions on our Facebook page, Sunday Live. Our SMS line is also open. The number is 34065, and calls are charged at 2 rands per SMS. MEC, I want to start with you. The comment that Mark made, that if you're starting on a road, it would seem. At the very least, you need to acknowledge your part in having failed the children of Limpopo. Are you prepared to do that?
Well, let me place matters on record view. It's just that probably my colleague from Section 27 has not been following the interactions that I had in the province. At the beginning, I did, of course, in some of the local radio stations in the province, said this matter could have had it been handled differently, and therefore I did say to the people of the province that we are very sorry for what have happened. It's just that probably maybe tonight he might have expected that from me. That I have already done in the province, and I would also take this opportunity to say again, this matter could have been avoided had it been handled differently. And as such, notwithstanding everything, I do as well apologize as a team to the people of the province that the matter could have been handled differently. Unfortunately, we couldn't, all of us as a collective.
But are you able to say that your officials, you have political oversight over them, are you able to say that your officials did the best they could prior to December, when Section 100 had to be implemented? Can you say that confidently? That the department was being run as best as it could be?
Well, like I said, Vuyo, that the problem of cash flow is what has been characterizing this department, not only last year. Like I explained, that the assessment that we had to do internally together with my officials points to the fact that since 2004, and probably predating even years before that, there has always been a very serious cash flow management in this department. That led to continuous, overspend on conditions of employees for all those years. And the only thing that made it possible for the department to move forward was that it was permitted to overspend. Now, last year, after we had shifted monies to the compensation of employees, it actually created a much more bigger problem, because it meant that the department will be faced with not only one item or one program. It meant that a couple of programs have been affected, and the fact that money was not brought into the department, not forgetting that the administrative processes, working together with schools to get the requisitions, to consolidate them into what will be a probable, order subject to the available resources. That work was done, Vuyo, and unfortunately in September, like I said, when these processes were to be triggered moving forward, we couldn't because of that cash flow problem.
But on what basis then would Premier Castle Matale say heads are going to? Because you are a member of his executive. Presumably, you would have appraised him of the situation, and he should be talking the same language that you're talking.
Clearly, Vuyo, the points that I'm raising here, my premier will be able to receive a report. I think you are quite aware that he has set up an investigation team that is leading, and also the administrative team is there. We are interacting with that process very closely as a department. We are making our own submissions. But the point I'm raising here, it is at the level of governance on finance matters, that when I went to present the budget last year before the legislature, these matters, including areas where monies were cut, were actually made known to everyone, including also the national department was quite aware that there were these difficulties that my department is going through, because we had to cut money in areas of public ordinary schools, in areas of LTSM, areas of infrastructure, scholar transport, and so forth and so on. Okay. Now, that point has been very clear. Like I said, we expected that through treasury processes, between our provincial treasury and nationally, money were to probably flow the other way around so that this problem could therefore be attended to.
Okay.
So other matters, I think they are subject to processes. We are making those submissions to the office of my Honorable Premier with regard to the team that he has set up.
Okay, Mr. Lesofi, was the National Department of Education aware of the challenges that the MEC has alluded to?
Thank you so much, Vivian. Thank you for raising that particular question, because where we stand, it would be honestly unfair to blame the Department of Basic Education for helping. In December, when we stepped in there, books were supposed to be in the warehouse. In December, there was no intervention. In December, there was no minister that was in charge in Limpopo. And for any person to come and blame the National Department for assisting is not only unfair, it's unfortunate. Because our intervention made for books to be there.
Okay.
If we didn't intervene, as of now, as I'm speaking to you now, if we didn't intervene even an inch, children of Limpopo not even having textbook, even today, as I'm speaking to you.
Okay.
So for our own souls of ensuring that we shelve everything, move with the necessary speed as concurred by the report, and get the books to children, for someone to come and say, it is because of you guys in National Department that we find ourselves in this situation.
But
it's
then
unfair.
What do you have to say for yourselves when someone asks that you've been there for 5 months? If one reads the report of Professor Metcalf carefully, it suggests that there was no plan. You got in there, you didn't seem to know what it was that you were supposed to do. I mean, 3 administrators in 4 months. There was no way there could have been stability and the kind of response that you were supposed to give to the people of...
I'm also glad that you are raising that part. And took me to court. This person took me to court. I was at the center. The other one says, if you don't buy from me, you can't buy. The other one says, if you don't deliver books, I'm taking you to court. I'm caught in the middle of that particular court cases. The other one said, I've got a legitimate contract, buy through me. The other one says that it's a constitutional right of these particular children to get books. I'm sitting into 2 conflicting court cases. And in the middle of that conflicting court cases, everything has been frozen in terms of budget, in terms of ensuring that we order those particular books, in terms of resourcing our intervention. Remember, when we intervene, we don't intervene with a bag full of money. We have to ask money from the relevant departments. And no relevant departments gave us money.
But then if one follows your logic and the sequence of events, when you actually place the orders of the books that you're saying now have delivered, or maybe not, as past report says, not all of them have arrived, you had done so without due regard to him.
No, we did. They will ask him. The first order, when the first administrator went to order books, they requested the information from Edu Solution to say, provide this particular information. Unfortunately, which is unfortunate, and that's why we've taken the decision, that particular administrator didn't follow due processes. And instead of not following those due processes, that particular administrator was fired.
So you're saying that here tonight, 5 months that you've been in Limpopo, you've taken over Limpopo, you've done the best you could do as the National Department of Education.
It's not us, it's the report of Professor Mary Metcalf that
but
says
from
that.
where you sit,
so where we stand, where we stand, we believe that we've done everything possible with the limited time, limited skill, limited talent, and limited resources and capacity for us to collapse a 6-week program into a 2-week program. Definitely sure there will be mistakes that are going to happen, and the report captures those parts.
Is that what you found, Prof? That the National Department did the best they could?
I think that there's issues around time prior to the ordering of textbooks. Books were ordered in the first week of June. Before that, there were 2 processes of initiating the orders, which was preceded by the Limpopo Department of Education's planning. So I think the first question for citizens is, once the department knew that they were going to overspend, and I think the MEC has explained to us that they knew they were going to overspend, there would have been administrative actions that they should have taken, and there were communication that they should have undertaken. If he knew in September, we know that in October, schools were told to order. And in fact, they ordered way in excess of the available budget. So you had an expectation of books coming, which expectation still exists today. The second thing, Prem, I don't have enough information. I know that there were 3 administrators. I know that the processes of ordering textbooks began and stopped, and there were complications to do with the court case. But my concern, again, to come back to my opening comments, is that principals in all of this time were not informed adequately about what was happening. There was a sense, which I think we now need to get back to, is that this is a shared problem. We're in it together. Let's be frank. Let's tell you what are the challenges we're facing, and let's make sure that with resources we have, we do the best job possible. But expectations were not being met.
From where you sit, Mark, having listened to both the MEC and the advisor to the national minister, can you say here in front of everybody that you are, from where you sit, both parties did the best they could under whatever circumstances they may have found themselves in?
No, I can't. I mean, I've been working closely with the National Department, and certainly Panyaza and his team have been making an effort. A lot of problems still, and I must say, as I sit here, I feel even more troubled because I see the provincial department making allegations about the national department making allegations about the provincial department, and I'm asking myself, isn't there meant to be one government in this country? Isn't there meant to be one party that is leading the government? Why can't they talk to each other? I mean, are they people in a different country? They're under a duty. This is the Constitution. It says the children have a right to basic education. It doesn't say the children of Gauteng have a right, but the children of Limpopo don't have a right. So you need to pick up these problems early. You need to talk to each other. You need to work out the solutions before it's a crisis situation, work out the solutions before the damage is done. And that did not happen. We were writing letters to the provincial department and to the administrator about the Limpopo textbooks from February. We kept on getting promises. So you can't say that everybody just woke up in May when the court case took place and discovered there were no books. It was known that there were no books for grades 10, 1, 2 and 3 from this day of school, and in fact from December, when it was clear that the order was not going to be fulfilled.
Well, I'm glad you answered that way, because very briefly I want to ask you, because a lot of people are more inclined to believe you as the people who took the government to court to force them to give textbooks to the children. But what we have found over the past few weeks, certainly, is that you are keen to kiss him and spit at him. Now, it's a bit of a confusion because you have asked the resignation or the axing of the MEC, but you haven't said the same about the minister, the National Minister of Education. Yet you're putting them on the same level now when you're doing your analysis.
Yeah, well, I have said that MEC Masemola should resign, and
Yes.
I say that again tonight. I've also said that the Minister of Basic Education has a responsibility to provide a proper account as the minister to the president of this country and to the cabinet and to the people of this country. But I think that with the way our country is set up, with provinces, with the way the law allocates responsibility for the provision of basic education services, the first fault in this instance lies within the province. From the little that I know about the province, I have seen the deterioration of services. Many things that we're not talking about tonight, the state of toilets, the lack of basic budget that exists within the schools, all of that suggests that that MEC is not fit to take responsibility for the lives of those children. I'll just finish with this point, that the National Department at least has come to Section 27 and said, we made a mistake to begin with in opposing this court case. We're aware of our shortcomings, but we do want to try to work together to sort this problem out. And I think that that is an important step.
Okay. It's time to take another short break. Please do stay with us. Welcome back. This is Sunday Live, your weekly current affairs show here on SABC1 Mzansi. For sure, Mr. Ndlovu, you were shaking your head there disapprovingly. What you're itching to say something before we took the break.
Indeed, Vuyo. Thank you very much. Look, I think if we concentrate on phase 2, beginning in December, it's got to be said that the National Department did everything it could, but its best was just not good enough. And poor Panyaza is from the ministry and is not the administrator. Let me just recount at least 4 issues.
It's not your body, though.
Firstly, he's my body.
Just make sure.
But in the first instance, the administrator goes there. He's going to work with the provincial that he finds there. He says to all of them, you're incompetent, you need to be fired. For goodness sake, where do you get the support from? You don't do that when you're going to come around and change a place. A change strategist knows you create the capacity in the system to be able to support you. That's the first point. The second point, you then walk into the place, having created that paralysis, you then make sure that you change everything that is in the system. First from the budget that the schools were given, and you don't inform the schools that you've changed your budgets. Put it down from what it was. By the way, the 655 is the budget allocation to all schools. The actual spend in terms of requisitions that we gave to the department was 581 million. That now went down to 249. Where does the 249 come from? 249 is only caps. There is no more top-ups. Now, you then don't tell the schools, we're actually going to give you a third of what you ordered. You only tell them that on the 29th of June. For goodness sake, what do you expect? Thirdly, you then appoint service providers. 3 of them in terms of levels who have got no clue what they're doing. And they come in with unintegrated systems. And they come in and they cut away all the processes that would you monitor and follow the processes. Finally, you then say you're going to do all of this in 2 weeks. You can only do that if you're sitting in the national office and you have no experience of what goes on in the provinces.
Now, before I come to you, Prof, I just want, because of what you're raising, MEC, I want to come to you. Is what Mr. Ndlovu is saying there the same way or exactly the same way you feel?
Let me firstly clarify what my colleague from Section 27 said when he calls for the resignation of the MEC. I think that comment is very unfortunate. It's misleading and probably overstating his importance in the nation, because as a lawyer, I would appreciate the fact that he should be able to interpret to the nation his deep understanding of what really Section 100 means, because you can't point the finger. He must similar to take responsibility of something that politically, administratively, legally, his powers are no longer here. Noting that point, what has happened is that myself, together with my minister, we had a lot of discussions and very importantly trying to speed up all these processes. And I'm very happy that the colleague from Section 27 said, since February, March, he has been communicating with the administrator who was on site. He never spoke to the MEC responsible in the province and asked for a understand exactly what happened. So his context and understanding of the failures is with his communications with the then administrator. But be that as it may, it's very clear that out of what has happened, a couple of schools which we are still trying to actually collate information and verify, to date have not received their books. And what is important is that myself, together with my minister, we are meeting on Tuesday. We will be giving her the preliminary report with regard to our findings about the number of schools that are affected somewhat, so that we can speedily make sure that resources probably are made available by National Treasury to deal with this problem, because from where we stand, it is quite clear that schools did not receive the quantums that they might have expected in terms of numbers. Some of them, including also that some schools did not receive books that were supposed to be given to them, because the ordering process, to a larger extent as well, had its own challenges, I suppose, which reduced possibilities of adequate ordering and procurement of books to schools. It's clear that it's true that there are schools that did not receive their books, and because of the ordering processes. Now, that is a point that we've got to deal with very urgently, working together with the National Treasury through our National Minister. They've got to make resources available, because also, Vuyo, these books that we have procured, we have used the budget for this year 2012, 2013, and which, of course, we are hard at work now to make sure that with our current administrator in the department, Matthews Mzwandile, working very hard so that we can be able to deal with these things so it doesn't recur towards the end of the year.
Okay, it sounds like another crisis is looming there. Very, very briefly, Mark, you wanted to say something
Just
quickly.
to respond briefly to the Minister, a Section 100 intervention takes place when a provincial department is failing to meet its obligations to, in this case, to the learners. So there's a pre-existing problem that requires the national government to come in. The second point is that in the Constitution, if you look at Section 133, members of the Executive Council are duty-bound to uphold the Constitution and to report to their provincial legislatures. And what I'm saying is that the Constitution says children have a right to basic education, and nobody would argue that the children of Limpopo are not getting that right.
Okay. Professor, you've made some observations and you're making some recommendations around Section 100 and its implementation. I think the gaps are there, I think, for everybody to see. But right now, to take care of what Mr. Haywood was talking about, how do we make sure that the children do not suffer in the process simply because national blames the province blames national, and Section 100, and the fact that there's uncertainty around that means that everybody pretty much does whatever they think they should be doing.
Thank you, Voyo. I think the first thing is that we do need clarity around 100. I've been watching Limpopo, here again in the Eastern Cape. I've been watching in Limpopo. And the fact that the President has taken this move to initiate processes around a memorandum of understanding so that things can be clearer until secondary legislation is passed to support the Constitution. It's absolutely critical. When you move into a province which is not performing, you need to be able to move quickly, you need to be able to expedite decision making, and we've seen both in Eastern Cape and Limpopo protracted decision making processes. But the second thing that you've raised, which I think is important, and I think it comes through all of the time from Section 27, is a concern about the children. What we need to do is to start looking at the fact that it's now July. Towards the end of July, we've got August, September, October. We've got to be ready for next year. What that means has to be frankness and a moving away from blaming and a moving away from defending oneself to saying honestly what can be expected next year. How much money is going to be made available by Treasury? Does that mean that we're going to carry on with not enough top-ups? If there's not going to be enough top-ups, we need community-based campaigns to make sure that all of the books that are there are going to be used. And principals and teachers need to plan on the basis of exactly what they're going to get. As a teacher, you need to know what books you're going, if they're going to be new books, if you're going to have enough books, because that is what frustrated the teachers, is not having the information and the knowledge.
Okay. It's time to take another short ad break. Please stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Sunday Live. Now, let's do what each one of you has been asking. Stop the blame game and say, beyond this point, what is the best thing to do to make sure, one, that these kids get their books now, like yesterday, and then two, we avoid what happened here. Mark?
I would say two things. The first thing is that we're just past halfway through the year. There's still 4 months until the November exams. The court ordered a catch-up plan for these students. There has to be a proper catch-up plan, and we must throw everything we can into repairing the damage that these students have faced. That's what we owe to grade 10 and to 1, 2 and 3, grades 1, 2 and 3. The second thing, as Mary has just said, is we have to make sure that at the beginning of 2013 we do not have a repeat of this, and that all the books that are needed by all of the learners, because there are going to be, I think, 7 grades that enter the CAPS curriculum in 2013, that all of those children have all of those books. That's what we need to be focusing our attentions on now.
Okay, let me ask you then, Mr. Lesufi, where is the catch-up plan?
No, we are presenting it to court on the 30th of July. We have managed to get resources on it, internal resources from the department. So on the catch-up plan, we are quite convinced we are ready to deal with that things. The expertise and the talent we have managed to achieve during either public strikes and other disturbances like Khutsong will then amalgamate those particular experiences, put it there. We've already put the team of subject advisors to pull out the limitations and the gaps that they can see from the June results and deal with those things. And let me respond to that June results as well, because there is a Sunday publication that have put a really irresponsible an article where, without any scientific evidence or scientific research, someone work in one school and another school and pass sweeping judgment on the quality of June examination in Limpopo, which is very, very unfortunate. We are collating the information. We are still working on that particular information, but someone has judgment already on that particular information. So where we are, the 2010 cycle, we've managed to make a presentation to National Treasury. We've managed to make presentation to the relevant authorities to assist us with the unpacking of Section 100. We are cooperating with other task teams that have been appointed. So where we are quite convinced the preparations for 2013 has started. We have started a head count, literal head count, because the data that we have was not reliable. We've started to count each and every child in Limpopo, each and every teacher. So we've managed to do those things. The ministers go in there from tomorrow until Wednesday to consolidate and ensure that the preparation for 2013 starts soonest.
I haven't heard you talking about engaging other stakeholders, in particular teachers, who have already said they're not going to do this if there's no money.
We had 3 sessions already with the teachers, formations and various teacher formations. And that's the reason why the ministers go in. They were meeting the district officials to get the update and the preparation for the catch-up plan, because we need to present it by the 30th of July. They're going to engage with teacher formation and SGP in that particular province, as well as principals of all the schools, to deal and clarify all the gaps that have been identified by Professor Mary Metcalf. So where we are, as I said, we have moved from the blame game. We are indeed in the belly of the problem, and we're going to sort it out jointly with the provincial department. It's just unfortunately that we had misunderstanding of some of the historic problems that we had. But where we are, all the plans that are talking about, all the working that are working about, we're doing it jointly. That is why the minister will meet with the MEC when he arrives, and jointly ensure that we move together. Unfortunately, Voyo, the legislation of Section 100 make 2 bulls to be in one crawl. And you know what happens naturally. I know our friends in Section 27 have argued very, very strongly where the powers are. But we're working jointly as government. We're going to work on this particular issue together and ensure that we indeed restore the benefit, the pride of every learner in Limpopo, and ensure that every parent in that particular province can indeed achieve what they intended to achieve with their own children.
Okay, let's go to the other bull. MEC, the blaming game. What do we do now?
Well, what I can say, Vuyo, is that Lesufi is quite correct that we are in discussions, and in as much as we have finalized the catch-up program for our learners, it does not necessarily suggest, and I think there's a point that we need to clarify the nation, it does not necessarily suggest that in our schools in the province, from January to date, there was no teaching. Precisely because CAPS does not replace NCS, and in as much as we have been able to do a very thorough assessment, we issued a questionnaire to all our schools to find out exactly to what extent have they moved with regard to teaching and learning in their classroom. And the feedback that we got is quite exciting, except to say that work needs to be done to strengthen and enrich where there could have been some challenges, and hence the context of the catch-up program is one important process that will be continuing. As Lesufi has said, we are working very hard on that. The second point for us, Vuyo, is that we have taken a decision as the provincial government that we've got to reduce the compensation of budgets, and my department also is seriously expected to present a proposal to the Executive Council at the end of this month with regard to how do we review the organizational structure, and some decisions that we took. We've freezed a lot of posts that are not funded, because we've got to release money from the compensation of employees into key programs of the department. Is one critical point that we're dealing with. The third issue it is around the processes that we have started together here in the department with our administrator, Mr. Mzwandile Matthews, who are very far advanced with regard to the processes for procurement for learner support teacher material for the academic year 2013. And the last point, which I also want to comment on,
very briefly,
is this article in the Sunday Times. I think for me, as the MEC in this province, notwithstanding what these people might be intending to actually tell the nation, it is regrettable because it gives a very wrong impression that nothing has happened in the province, which understandably, for me, it undermines the intellect of our children. It undermines as well the hard work of us. And therefore, we've got to be very sensitive as South Africans as to what extent we want to communicate which information and what are the intended purposes of what we communicate. Be rest assured, view that we are hard at work. This department will not be the same going forward. Come academic year 2013, all systems will be more than ready.
Okay, let's hope that indeed is what is going to happen. But very briefly, before I let you go, I want to ask you this because I'm coming to Mr. Ndlovu next. There was a report on Friday that UN authorized or wanted speeded up the payment, EduSolutions payment. How true is that, and were you involved in trying to get EduSolutions paid 138 million rands when in fact you were told that there was no money in the kitty?
There are people hell-bent in actually creating an impression on my integrity and trying to project a different character in Dixon from what he is at the moment. It is unfortunate that that article appeared as it was because very clearly, Vuyo, the administrative chain of command in any public institution, including departments, is very clear. And unfortunately, I don't know where does that come from. The accounting lines in the department with regard to financial decisions, MECs don't come closer to take financial decisions with regard to payments or not payments of service providers and other related matters. Okay. The chain of command administratively, that statement is misleading. It has got very bad intentions, nothing else but to present Masemola as a bad person from what I am at the moment.
Thank you.
It's very unfortunate.
Out of time, and I'm very sorry to do this to both of you. I'm going to give you 30 seconds each to make your closing remarks. Mr. Ndlovu?
Look, I think the first thing is to accept that the non-delivery of workbooks and textbooks has had a very adverse impact on the children. Secondly is to really say that what is the basic minimum requirement for children that don't have books at the moment and try and meet that. Thirdly, we've built the morale of the people in the officials in the department and make sure we deliver through them. And finally, the service providers that have not delivered, we've got to look into it and try and improve the engagement that side.
The people who have to have the confidence in their work to move learning forward are teachers and the managers at school level. We have to take them into our confidence within the limited resources, give them what they need, because at the moment there's too much at school level about what should be expected and what is needed. We have to support the teachers.
Thank you very much. Well, to my guests, all five of you, thank you very much for coming. That's all we had time for this evening. Join us again next week. Remember, if you have comments, questions, suggestions, you can contact us via our Facebook page, Sunday Live, or by dropping us an email, sundaylive@sabc.co.za. Good night.